It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? This is The Big Show, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm Michael Traikos. With me, as always, can't shake this guy, Ryan Kennedy, editor-in-chief of the Hockey News magazine. And we got Drew Shore again, our favorite Wednesday guest. How you doing, guys?
Excellent.
All right.
I'm
let's
doing
get right
good.
into it. Go ahead, Drew.
I feel for you guys, though, on the East Coast. I'm tired today just staying up in mountain time watching the hockey games.
I stayed up until 12:30 watching Utah Vegas. It's like I wasn't going to stay up, and then Utah took the lead. I'm like, all right, I got to see if they can pull it off, and they did. So I was happy to lose a little sleep over that exciting finish.
Yeah, thankfully, a lot of the overtime is happening in the East. Otherwise, these double overtimes, like the other night with Ottawa, Carolina, it doesn't work well when you're on the in Eastern Standard Time Zone. But let's get right into it with the Buffalo Boston series now knotted up at 1. Sabres took game 1, but then the Boston Bruins evened it up with a 4-2 win in game 2. Story of the night, let's talk about goaltending. And, PK Subban, I can say it, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think I said it right, Ryan. Struggling in net for the Sabres, giving up 4 goals and 19 shots. A memorable one from Morgan Geekie, where he backhanded basically just a nothing dump in that bounced past UPL for just an ugly, ugly goal, kind of shades of who was it? Dan Kluche back in the day, and Vesa Toskala for the Leafs. Yeah. So UPL was pulled and replaced with Alex Lyon after Victor Arvidsson made it 4-0 with 16 seconds left in the third. Ryan, let's start us off. What are the chances that we see UPL in game 3?
I would put it at 50-50 because the Sabres have gone with a platoon for most of the season, and Alex Lyon has been very good for them. So it's not necessarily a step down to put Lyon in there. It's funny, as soon as Geekie scored that goal, social media was just awash of goalies or people who had talked to goalies who said that's like their worst nightmare, is that like long bouncing puck from like center ice where you can't quite get a beat on it. And, you get in your head where you're like, I can't let this beat me. And then, of course, that's exactly what happens. So there was a lot of sympathy out there for UPL on that play. It is one game. You knew the Bruins were going to have pushback after blowing game 1, because let's face it, they did blow the game. They had a lead late and Buffalo took over on them. So you knew there's going to be pushback. But I'm certainly not giving up on UPL. I think whatever Lindy Ruff decides is totally fine in my mind.
How about you, Drew? Who would you go with, Alex Lyon or back to UPL for game 3?
I would go with Alex Lyon for game 3. I think that, it's unfortunate, right? And it's easy for all of us, we're on our couches, to say he should stop that puck. But that was just such a deflating goal for their team at that point in the game. And I just think because they, like Ryan said, have played both of them on and off for a majority of the year, and Lyons played well, I think you give him the start in game 3.
I think Boston now has the momentum, Drew. Like they played really well up until a certain point in game 1. And then, again, with game 2, they controlled it. And this time we're able to kind of seal the deal. Do you feel comfortable or confident that one team's got the edge going into game 3?
Yeah, I think Boston does. And I think that I was pretty impressed by the response. The way that they kind of blew game 1 was something that you don't see a lot in the playoffs these days. So the fact that they were able to come out and dominate game 2, I thought was really impressive. And I think for all these teams in playoffs, like who start on the road, the goal is always we have to steal one of the 2 games on the road. And if you can do that, then you kind of take over home ice. So you feel confident about that. So I think Boston has the edge here.
All right. Ryan, Utah versus Vegas. Game 1 went to Vegas, but again, just like how we talked about with the Buffalo Boston series, Utah answered back, defeating the Golden Knights 3-2 in Game 2 to tie the series. And Logan Cooley, who was getting death threats in Game 1, buried the eventual game winner. Became the youngest American player to score in his first 2 playoff games, and that record was previously held by Utah's captain Clayton Keller. They're going back to Utah. It's going to be the first time that Utah has hosted a playoff game. I'm excited, but how do you feel about the Mammoth in terms of their expectations going into the series, and whether they could actually take down the Golden Knights?
Yeah, it's very interesting because Utah, in some ways, they're still a pretty young team, even though they do have some guys with Stanley Cup experience like Mikhail Sergachev and Ian Cole. But really, like when you watch these first 2 games, like Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther have been the main drivers of this team. Much like, Dylan Guenther had 40 goals in the regular season, maybe one of the quietest 40-goal seasons in the NHL. We got to get more people out in Utah to cover the Mammoth. But the speed that the 2 of them have and the chemistry together has been such a difference maker for the Mammoth. And to me, this series is more about Vegas than it is about Utah in a strange way, because Vegas during the regular season underperformed, and then Tortorella comes in and they got hot again. Carter Hart is now their starter, which was not the case for most of the season. He got hot. So a lot of it is sort of like, can Vegas live up to what we thought they would be sort of preseason, which is a Stanley Cup favorite? And, they've played very heavy. They've played typically pretty smart. And I think in Game 1, they showed Utah what it means to sort of wrestle victory out of the jaws of defeat. And conversely, I thought it was very impressive that Utah held on for the win in those last 5 minutes in Game 2, because that could have gone the other way, right? Like Vegas pulled the goalie, I think, with like just under 3 to play. It was a pretty extended series, and it got a little squirrely there at the end. Certainly there was, a penalty that could have been called on Vegas in the last minute that was not. And I was thinking like, oh man, if they score here, Utah would rightly be outraged. But the Mammoth held on. So to me, this is very much a wide open series, because now that Utah knows how to win against Vegas, it becomes that chess match where how does Vegas respond in Game 3 on Utah ice?
Yeah, a lot of speed on that Utah team, guys?
Totally.
Like I'm sort of noticing a discrepancy between how the 2 teams play. Like on one side, you've got an older Vegas team. Like Mark Stone has obviously never been fleet of foot, but it really gets exposed when Ryan mentioned Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley, and it just seems like everyone on Utah can fly. Drew, how do you see this series kind of breaking down? And does Vegas have to do something to kind of counteract or slow Utah down?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that they got to do kind of what LA, I actually thought, even though they lost the game, did a good job against Colorado for a majority of the night. And I think that kind of like what Ryan said, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is how good Utah's young players have been through the first 2 games of this series. And not only are those guys who you mentioned able to put the puck in the net, but they're playing really hard too. I still think as the series goes on, Vegas is probably going to wear Utah down, but I've been really impressed with Utah. And that Ryan Smith, their owner, I think is already tweeting about bringing random fans into his box for Game 3. So I'm sure that building is going to be rocking, and I think the series is going to be a long one.
Yeah, it's been a fun playoffs with, a lot of, like, I don't want to say the Buffalo Sabres are a first-time team, but when you've been out of the playoffs for 14 years, it sure does feel like that. And probably to a segment of fans who weren't even born the last time the Sabres were in the playoffs, it does feel like they're a first-timer. And now Utah is going to get their first bit of playoff excitement. I'm curious to see, are we going to see white towels waving a la the Arizona Coyotes, or do they have something else kind of cooking up their sleeves? We shall see. Before we head over to the Tampa Bay, Montreal, I want to keep it into the West here with Colorado versus LA. 2 games in, I got to say, guys, this series has gone the way I think a lot of us thought it was going to go. You know, Colorado has been pushed. I'll give LA some credit with how they've played. But here we are, 2 games in. It's 2-0 for the Avs, kind of in the driver's seat. And Drew, we'll start with you because you are Mr. Denver himself. What has impressed you with Colorado? And, you know, have you been impressed with how LA has sort of answered and at least pushed the Colorado Avalanche to a degree?
Yeah, like I said, I've been impressed by LA. I think that, I mean, taking a game into overtime on the road against the Avs, I think is almost turning the game into a coin flip. I think that if you look at it, they've done a good job of slowing Colorado down through the neutral zone, but offensively, I mean, they really haven't been able to generate much of anything. And I think the positive for the Avalanche is everyone talks about how good their goal scoring is, and we don't need to get into that, but they're comfortable winning those 2-1 hockey games that a lot of their players mentioned. So I think if I'm LA, they need to make a change somewhere in the top 6. I think it's time to break up the top line of Panarin, Kopitar, and Kempe. I think if you look at the best lines in hockey, a lot of them don't have 3 players that all need the puck, and I think that line does. So I think you almost need to throw a guy like Trevor Moore up there with Panarin and Kopitar just to add some speed and forechecking and let him do a couple things and let those guys hang on to the puck.
Yeah, it's too bad they really don't have Kevin Fiala, who was injured, obviously, in the Olympics. I feel like, you know, just the addition of another top 6 forward, you know, maybe we're talking about a series that's tied 1-1. How about it, Ryan? What do you think? Do you agree with Drew that maybe breaking up the top line? Obviously, Panarin's scoring. He's got, a goal in each of the games, but who else kind of needs to step up, or what needs to change?
Yeah, no, I think Drew is dead on there, because if you look at Adrian Kempe, he has 3 shots through 2 games, and that's not enough for Adrian Kempe. Like, I think Moore has 6 shots. Alex Laferriere has 8 shots. So clearly guys are getting loose. But I think if you did break up that top line, then maybe you get Kempe away from some of the top players on Colorado, and maybe he gets loose, right? And you know, that's going to have to be how LA wins this. Like, they're not going to win a track meet against Colorado, nor should they even try. And so, I totally agree that the first 2 games, like, they did what they could. They kept it close. One went to overtime, could have gone either way. But if they want to actually make a game of the series, they're going to need more offense from guys not named Panarin, and they're going to still need Panarin to do what he's already been doing.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about Tampa Bay, Montreal. This has been anything but a track meet. If anything, it's been a downright kind of street brawl so far for games 1 and 2. Well, you know, penalties and the penalty kill defined game 1, with Montreal scoring 3 of their 4 goals on the power play, all compliments of or courtesy of Juraj Slafkovsky. In game 2, we saw a lot of the extracurricular stuff again. This time Slafkovsky dropped the glove with Brandon Hagel. Might not have been the best decision for Slafkovsky, who got dropped with a nasty right hook. Ryan, the physicality. This is a Lightning team that I just wrote about today, kind of has taken a page out of the Florida Panthers playbook, led the NHL in penalty minutes this year. So far is following that trend into the playoffs. Can this work? John Cooper said, you know, someone's got to be the villain, and it might as well be the Tampa Bay Lightning now that the Florida Panthers are out. But is this a winning strategy in your opinion?
I certainly think it is. And, you know, it's the team of Corey Perry. And if you have Corey Perry, you know that there's going to be chaos. You know, there's going to be habitual line stepping, and there's going to be fun if you're not the ones playing against them. And I think that Montreal team in particular is a good one to, you know, implicate this strategy, because they have a lot of smaller players, and then they have a lot of sort of wild card players that, you know, like, if you want to go toe to toe physically with Tampa Bay, then you're putting Arbor Xhekaj out there. And if Arbor Xhekaj is not fighting, he's a liability. And, you know, we saw it in game 2. He didn't play very much. And ironically, Tampa has to be careful because they put Scott Sabrin out there late in the third period, and he took a penalty when it was tied. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's the game over. Montreal's going to score on the power play because that's what they've done this series. Luckily for the Bolts, they escaped it. So we might not see a lot of Scott Sabrin from here on out. But, Tampa Bay is comfortable playing in the mud, and they have enough skill that even when they're doing that, they know, like, they've got Nikita Kucherov. They've got Braden Point. They've got guys that can make a difference that way. So, yeah, I think this is the way to do it. And it'll be interesting to see, do we see any Montreal lineup changes for Game 3?
Yeah, you mentioned Sabrin coming in for Connor Geekie, and Kirby Dach made a couple of critical errors in overtime, including icing the puck and then losing track of JJ Moser on the ensuing faceoff, which contributed to the game-winning goal. There's talk in Montreal that Dach should be replaced in the lineup, potentially for Joe Veleno or Brandon Gallagher. What do you think, Drew? Do you think Dach is out and maybe one of those guys is in?
I mean, he clearly made a couple errors on that last sequence of events. I like bringing in Brendan Gallagher. I've always been a fan of him. He seems like a guy that is going to come in and bring a lot of energy in the lineup. He's also a guy who historically has been able to put the puck in the net. I mean, I know that production has gone down a lot over the recent years, but I think that I like changing that and throwing that into Brendan Gallagher. And he's another guy that, despite his size, is not going to be a guy who's going to be pushed around. He's at least going to go down swinging there. And I think that if I'm Tampa, I continue to play the way that they're playing, as Ryan calls it, getting into the mud, taking a page out of the Florida Panthers book. And I think that I like the addition of Brendan Gallagher in the lineup, especially for Game 3 at home.
Before we move on from this one, a weird stat. I don't know if you guys realize this, but Nikita Kucherov, who scored last night, broke a 16-game playoff goal drought to tie things up 2-2. Ryan, how surprising is that Kucherov, who we just kind of associate with easily putting up points, whether it's goals, assists, whatever, had gone 16 games?
Yeah, I wish I had known that before I took him first overall in our playoff pool. But luckily he snapped it, so that's cool. Very interesting.
You knew, Ryan. You knew.
Yeah. I was breaking the jinx for him. Yeah, he's a very interesting player because he does so much off the wall. And, he's so smart and he's got that great shot. So it's not like I guess he's not really a playoff style of player in the sense of he's not barreling towards the net. He's not going to the middle of the ice. I mean, he's a winger. And it was interesting. They had that big scrum in the first period, and he didn't do anything forever until, finally one of his teammates had like two habs on him, and he grabbed one guy from behind. But he was basically milling about with Jakub Dobiš. And I'm like, do something. Like everybody else on Tampa Bay is like throwing down. And I know you don't want him like breaking his hand or anything, but it just, hug somebody, just make an effort. At least put on airs that you might, hit somebody. But having said that, he's probably going to win the Hart Trophy, and they're going to need him to be at that level if they're going to make a long run, which they're certainly capable of. And breaking that goalless drought, I think will be big for him to get off the schneid.
Yeah, you kind of awakened the beast there, or the slumbering giant, because I remember talking to Chris Stamkos, who's Steven Stamkos' dad. We were on the same return flight, and he was talking about, Kucherov can shut things down internally if he feels like nothing's working for him. And I think we saw that at the All-Star game in Toronto, where it was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to take my stick and my puck, and I'm just going to leave because I'm not playing well. And, we've seen that in the playoffs, even like against Columbus when they got swept. Like you could see a frustrated Kucherov. So the fact that he's had some success, scoring a goal, it's not a good sign for Montreal. Anyone on the Habs, Drew, that you think needs to step up, whether it's maybe like a Cole Caulfield or a Suzuki or even an Ivan Demidov? One of those guys that obviously had great regular seasons, and we're kind of waiting for them to kind of break out, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to need all of those offensive guys to get going in Montreal. I think that, first of all, the Kucherov stat is so mind-blowing because you're just so used to reading everything that, like, he's had another 12 points in 3 games. And so I was shocked by that. I would have guessed like 4 or 5 games is the longest he's gone without a goal in the playoffs. But I think that the Victor, I don't know if you guys know. Do we know when Hedman's supposed to return?
Not for this series, it doesn't sound like.
But I mean, I think they're going to need him back. And I mean, I think evidently in game 1, I don't know if Montreal scores 3 power play goals if he's playing in that game. I think single-handedly he might have probably shut down a couple of those things. So if he's not back, I mean, that's huge for Montreal in the series. But I just think that getting Kucherov going, like you said, I mean, everyone thinks of him. He's still a pass-first player, so I don't really think it's anything to be concerned about, especially on the power play where he does most of his damage. But I think anytime you're an elite offensive player, getting one early in the series is just such a relief that it's going to free him up for the rest of the series.
No doubt. All right. Vancouver Canucks. Now looking for a GM after letting Patrick Allvin go. And hey, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, where would you look? How about the hottest team in the NHL? Yes, Kevyn Adams, who was let go as GM of the Buffalo Sabres right when they were starting their incredible, hot streak down the stretch in December, is now reportedly being asked if, the Buffalo Sabres were asked for permission to interview Kevyn Adams for their vacant GM position. How surprising is this, Ryan? And do you see Adams as being a fit for the GM role in Vancouver? And let's keep in mind, Kevyn Adams had never been a GM before taking over the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, Kevyn Adams gave hope for us all who want to be an NHL GM one day. It's like, you don't have to have the proper experience. You just have to know the owner. It's a weird situation because, Buffalo won the division, but was it what was the change? Because I think they had won 3 in a row when he was fired, and then they just continued on being incredibly hot for a long stretch. So it wasn't the personnel, because the personnel was basically unchanged. Was it the vibes? Was it the players saying oh, well, Jarmo Kekalainen, he knows what he's doing. We feel safer now. If anything goes wrong, he'll make the right move to help. And then nothing went wrong. They just played incredibly well for the rest of the season. So my worry would be that Vancouver right now has some of the worst vibes in the NHL. It's them and the Rangers and I guess Toronto. So do you want to bring in somebody that does not instill a lot of confidence? Or on the flip side, do you say to the Canucks, hey, this guy built the Buffalo Sabres and they turned out great, so maybe he can do the same with us? To me, it's just so fascinating, right? Where do you give credit? And what was the actual change? You wish you could sort of just say, ask some of the Sabres, why did you guys start playing well? Do they actually know? Or was it just this weird kind of timing thing? I don't know, man. Mysteries of sport. Fascinating stuff. But I just think Vancouver would be the worst place for Kevyn Adams, because the media attention is on par, if not even worse than it is in Buffalo, or better in Buffalo now, right? Because the Sabres are winning. But ton of scrutiny in Vancouver. It's a really hard market for that stuff. So I don't know if he would fare very well there.
Yeah. How do you feel about this, Drew? And, I'll say Kevyn Adams, he made a hell of a trade with the Utah Mammoth in the summer and acquiring Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring in exchange for JJ Peterka. That trade has definitely worked out, maybe for both teams, actually.
Totally.
But that's also keep in mind that Jarmo Kekalainen was on staff when they made that trade. So, maybe that was a trade that, Kekalainen and Adams made in tandem. But what do you make of Adams now being sort of a hot commodity when it comes to available GMs?
Yeah, I think it's funny when you look at this overall, because the way every organization handles a lot of these big decisions is different, right? Like, I think if you look at what happened in Vancouver this year with the Quinn Hughes trade, like even in their year-end press conferences, there was a lot of kind of debate on who was pulling the strings there, whether it was the GM, whether it was the president of hockey, or who was actually had the final say in some of those trades. So I think overall, I'd like to see someone else new come in there, whether it's a Bill Scott or a Scott White or one of those guys. I think that he does have experience with this rebuild. I mean, it's pretty similar. Like he's not the same player, but they're going to have to get rid of Pettersson here, similar to how they wanted Eichel out of Buffalo. And there is a lot of similarities there, which I'm sure if you're Kevyn Adams, you're trying to sell the owners of the Vancouver Canucks on that you've kind of walked through this or read this book before and probably know the things you've done differently. I think that the one thing I will say, though, is I don't think Vancouver and the media and owners there are going to have the patience that Buffalo had. I mean, yes, they're in the playoffs now, but it took a really long time for them to get back here. And I just think that, I like to see someone new come in there.
Yeah. Ryan, I don't know if you watch Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this has shades of like Big Head kind of going to Vancouver.
Right. He's going to, Kevyn Adams is going to end up on the roof.
Just kind of fluked his way. It's like, you went to Stanford? Oh, hey. Anyhow, listen up. For over 75 years, Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com. Get in on the action. With that, we go to the awesome rapid fire action. Ryan's favorite segment of the program here. All right. So a documentary on the Maple Leafs legend, Bill Barocco, is in the works. I believe Steve Paikin is the one either narrating it or producing it, based on a chapter, I believe, in a book from THN contributor Ronnie Schuker called The Country in the Game, 30,000 Miles of Hockey Stories. Ryan, let's start with you. Favorite hockey documentary? Let's call it a Hawk Doc, and why?
Hawk Doc. The first one that comes to mind for me is Les Chiefs, which is about one of those teams, the Laval Chiefs from that Quebec Fight League. It's actually called like the Quebec Senior something. But it's a great documentary because, these are guys that, they don't have necessarily the skill to play in a higher league. And a lot of them are literally just brought in to be fighters. Some of them, it's like they can kind of skate, but not really. But it's like the fans want fights. And it really just shows the grind of that league at the time. Like a couple of them are literally living at the arena. There's like an apartment in the arena, and it's like, man, like you guys really want this dream to work out. And so it's a pretty I don't want to say grim, but it's a pretty real, raw documentary. And I know, back in the day, pretty much everybody in the Hockey News offices had seen it.
Yeah, I've seen some games in the Quebec, what do they call it, the Senior Hockey League or whatever, and it's insane. Like guys have like 300 plus PIMs in a season.
Yeah, and they're all sponsored by like radio stations.
Drew, have you seen any good hockey documentaries?
You guys know I'm going with this one. Miracle on Ice for me, especially the new one that's coming out for 2026. I think that one's going to be great. But no, just growing up as an American kid, that was the one that you'd always watch when you were a young kid over and over to get pumped up to play. That's probably the number one for me.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the Russian Five?
That one's good. Yeah. Really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that one with the Russians coming over mostly to Detroit. Like that one. All right. Last night, Commissioner Gary Bettman was in Buffalo, and he said at his presser right before the game that it would cost substantially more than $1 billion to bring in an expansion franchise. Great news for the NHL, I guess, when franchises are worth over $1 billion. So, Ryan, do you think we'll see another expansion franchise, even at that cost, join the NHL by, let's say, 2030? And if so, where are you looking?
Yes, I do, because for the other 32 NHL owners, they'll say $1 billion. Yes, please. Well, it'd be $2 billion if it was two teams, right? It feels like Houston and Atlanta would be the most obvious, and then maybe Phoenix as well. Obviously, it'd be contingent on an appropriate arena in an appropriate part of the greater Phoenix area, which was always bedeviling the Coyotes back in the day. But yeah, those would be the three cities that I would look at as the most likely. And then it just becomes a matter of, which bids and how fast. But by 2030, I feel like, yeah, we'll have two more teams.
Yeah. How about you, Drew? Ryan says Houston, Atlanta, or going back to Arizona. Didn't hear any Toronto or Canadian cities mentioned there, but what do you think?
I agree with Ryan. I definitely think we're going to see two more. I'm going to go off the radar a little bit here because no one's talking about this much. I think we're going to see back to Scottsdale. I agree. But then I also think we're going to see Austin, Texas.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah. I think we're going to see Austin for a couple of reasons. One, it's just blowing up. I know Houston's obviously a bigger city by population, but if you look at Austin, like other than the football stuff there that kind of ends, call it in December, there's a lot of people who live there full time now who love sports, who don't have a lot going on in the second half of the year. So I'm going to say Austin.
That's a great one because there's a ton of money flooding into Austin, particularly on like the tech side.
Yeah, I mean, so many businesses are moving there. Everyone seems to be getting out of California there. And I also just think it'd be an unreal place. Like players would love to be there and think it would be a great fit.
Bring back the Austin Ice Bats.
Kind of a hippier, hipster version of like Nashville. It feels like Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if you guys saw in the LA Colorado game, the glass broke behind the Kings bench, showering DJ Smith with, shards of glass. I think there was like 17 minutes it took for them to get everything cleaned up and get the ice or the glass replaced. Drew, craziest thing you've ever seen or remember causing a delay in a hockey game that you played in?
Well, I was supposed to play in one of the first ever outdoor games in the American Hockey League. And it was supposed to be in California, but the way they set it up is it was like a day game. So it was supposed to be super kid friendly. And they did the glass, but then they didn't have any netting or anything. So when we took pregame skate, anytime a goalie would like deflect a puck over the glass, it was going to be shooting right up into like a kid sitting there in the stands or something. Oh, no. So fortunately, they ended up delaying the game, canceled it. Then we had to play it the next day, but it was just very on brand for the American Hockey League at the time.
Oh my God. They probably saved like lives, if not lawsuits, by doing that.
Yeah. And it was these people in California who I'm sure thought like weren't really used to hockey or kind of how the puck worked. So they put the glass up, but there was no netting. And so anytime, like I said, a shot came on and a goalie deflected it, it was going right over to the glass, not even into like the first row, into like the 10th row. So game was canceled. I remember sitting in like the makeup locker room for like 3 hours when they were trying to figure out what to do. And we ended up playing the game the next day.
Ryan, you got any ones that you've seen? I'm trying to like rack my brain. All mine are like ones I've seen on YouTube with like Ty Domi fighting a Philadelphia Flyers fan who, found his way into the penalty box after the glass just kind of broke underneath him.
Yeah. I don't think I've had any, I can't think of any delays that I've been to, but the story that I always loved, which we've told in the Hockey News before, is way back when in the 70s when the WHA started. The first game in Philadelphia, they gave every fan an orange puck, and then the Zamboni broke through the ice before the game. So they had to cancel the game. And so everybody threw their pucks like onto the ice. I don't know if it was at the Zamboni guy. But to me, that was just like the funniest start to a league that was historically important, but did not last very long.
Yeah, I never understood these kind of like, we're gonna give fans like, things that you could throw onto the ice that are gonna do damage. Like, why give them?
No
You're gonna give them
projectiles.
pucks. Yeah, give them like foam pucks or something
Foam
like
pucks,
that.
totally.
Yeah.
Not
All right,
aerodynamic.
Ryan. We've got the U18 Men's World Championships getting underway today in Slovakia. I'm guessing you're not in Slovakia, but I'm also guessing that you've got your eyes on some of these 2026 and 2027 potential draftees who are suiting up for the game. Tell us, who are you most excited to watch?
Well, yeah, there's a number. This is a pretty important tournament for the draft. Starting off at the high end for Canada, they've got Tynan Lawrence and Keaton Verhoff. So with Tynan Lawrence, he made the switch midway through the season, going from the USHL to Boston University. Really didn't produce with the Terriers, but he is still one of the top centers available. It's kind of him and Caleb Malhotra, who is still in the OHL playoffs with Brantford. So if Tynan Lawrence can have a big tournament, that would really help his draft stock. Like maybe it bumps him up a couple of positions. Maybe he goes before Malhotra, or conversely, if Malhotra continues to have a big OHL playoffs, maybe he's the first center. With Verhoff, he's right at the top with a number of great defensemen. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he can have for Canada. He was just named captain. It'd be great to see him put up some points and just sort of generally be dominant, because he has that spotlight, whereas, Chase Reed doesn't, Carson Karls doesn't. And then I would also say the entire Team USA, because it's mainly NTDP kids, as always, but they did add Brooks Rogowski from Oshawa and Levi Harper from Saginaw in the OHL. But it has not been a great year for the NTDP. This is the golden opportunity to sort of end things right. So, Brady Noling in net, I think, he could have a great tournament. I think he'll be a first rounder. I think he'll be the first NTDP player off the board. But guys like Casey Mutrin, Victor Plant, Wyatt Cullen, Luke Shire on defense, like all those guys could really help their stock, maybe push themselves into the first round. If not, they're probably those sort of 25 to 40 guys. And then real quickly, I would say Måns Gudmundsson, the defenseman of Sweden. He'll be very intriguing to watch. Great playmaker, has some size. See if he puts up points. And then for 2027, a player I've been following for years already, used to be known as Max Penkin, now Max Kelsey from Germany. He's up for the draft, as I said, next year. Incredibly dynamic, incredibly competitive. Had an assist in their first game this morning, a loss against Sweden. So he's somebody that I'm keeping an eye on as well.
Ooh, a German that potentially could go number one, or not that high?
Not number one, because you've got Landon DuPont and Alexei Joseph, right. But I'm intrigued to see if he could be like top 10, maybe even top 5. From what I've heard, like he at the same age, he's not as good as Tim Stützle, but he's still very good.
Awesome. All right, listen up. We got 3 games on tap tonight. Anaheim and Edmonton will go in game 2. The Flyers trying to take a 3-0 stranglehold on the Penguins, and probably the must-watch game of the first round. Minnesota and Dallas, things are knotted at 1. They also have game 3 tonight. This was the Big Show, brought to you by the Hockey News. For Drew Shore and Ryan Kennedy, I'm Michael Traikos. See you next time.